The gunshots echoed through the darkness of Old Loggers Road like thunder ripping through a silent night. 2 precise shots, 2 seconds apart. 2 bullets that would shatter the perfect image of Oregon's most decorated state trooper. At 11:47 p.m. on a cool May evening, Officer Allison Reed lay dying on the cold gravel, her police radio crackling with routine dispatches as her life ebbed away. Her killer stood over her body. Not a drug dealer or a wanted criminal, but Sergeant Michael Harmon, her superior officer, her mentor, and the father of the unborn child she carried. The blood pooling beneath her body told a story of betrayal so profound that it would tear apart an entire police department. This wasn't just another tragic line-of-duty death. This was murder. Calculated and cold, committed by a man sworn to serve and protect. In the next hour, Sergeant Harmon would stage an elaborate crime scene, plant false evidence, and call in the discovery with practiced grief in his voice. He would embrace his colleagues at the scene, accept their condolences, and even deliver a moving eulogy at her memorial service, all while harboring the darkest secret imaginable. He had executed his pregnant lover to save his reputation. Thank you for joining us at True Crime Atlas, where we uncover the shocking truth behind the headlines. Tonight's investigation reveals how a passionate affair between 2 law enforcement officers spiraled into murder and exposed the dangerous abuse of power within America's police forces. Stay with us as we unravel this devastating betrayal that proves sometimes the most dangerous criminals are the ones wearing badges. Michael Harmon represented everything the African American community in Portland took pride in regarding representation in law enforcement. At 42, his rise through the ranks of the Oregon State Police had been nothing short of meteoric. Born to working-class parents in Northeast Portland, Michael had overcome early struggles with poverty and limited opportunities to become one of the department's most decorated officers. His father, a mechanic, and his mother, a school cafeteria worker, had instilled in him the values of hard work and community service. They always told me that success wasn't just about personal achievement. Michael often shared during community outreach events, it was about lifting others as you climb. This philosophy had earned him respect not only within the department, but throughout Portland's African American neighborhoods, where he was seen as a role model for young people considering careers in law enforcement. Michael's 18-year career included numerous commendations: the Medal of Valor for rescuing a family from a burning vehicle, the Distinguished Service Award for developing community policing initiatives that reduced violent crime in historically underserved areas, and the Leadership Excellence Award for mentoring minority recruits. His office wall displayed photos with community leaders, mayors, and even the governor, all testament to his influence and reputation. Rebecca Harmon, his wife of 20 years, was equally accomplished in her own right. A pediatric nurse at Legacy Emmanuel Medical Center, she had specialized in treating children from underserved communities, often working extra shifts to ensure continuity of care for her young patients. Together, they embodied the African American success story: professional achievement combined with unwavering commitment to community service. The Harmons lived in a tastefully renovated Victorian in the Irvington neighborhood, a far cry from the cramped apartment where Michael grew up. Their 2 sons, Marcus, 17, and Jamal, 15, attended prestigious schools and excelled in both academics and athletics. Marcus had already received early acceptance to Howard University, planning to follow his father into law enforcement, while Jamal showed promise as a track star with Olympic potential. "We built this life brick by brick," Rebecca would often say at church functions, her arm linked with Michael's. "Nothing was handed to us. We earned every bit of it through faith, determination, and supporting each other." Their marriage was frequently cited as an example of Black excellence and stability, featured in local publications celebrating successful African American families in Portland. Within the Oregon State Police, Michael was more than just a sergeant. He was a symbol of progress. As one of the highest-ranking African American officers in the department's history, he served on diversity committees, led recruitment drives at historically Black colleges, and advocated for policies that would make the force more representative of the communities it served. His colleagues, both Black and white, looked to him as a bridge builder who could navigate the complex dynamics of race and policing with wisdom and grace. Officer Allison Reed entered this world like a force of nature. At 31, she brought a different kind of energy to the department, fierce, uncompromising, and driven by a deep-seated need to prove herself. Born in Detroit to a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table, Allison had learned early that the world offered no shortcuts for Black women trying to succeed in traditionally male, traditionally white spaces. Her path to law enforcement had been unconventional. After graduating high school with honors, despite attending one of Detroit's most underfunded schools, Allison had enlisted in the Army. Her mother had begged her to consider college, but Allison saw the military as her fastest route to independence and respect. She served 2 tours in Afghanistan as a military police officer, earning a Bronze Star for her actions during a convoy ambush that saved the lives of 6 fellow soldiers. "The Army taught me that I could be more than what my circumstances dictated," Allison would later reflect in her police academy application essay. "It showed me that discipline, courage, and integrity could open doors that poverty and prejudice tried to keep shut." After her honorable discharge, Allison used her GI Bill benefits to earn a degree in criminal justice from Portland State University, graduating summa cum laude. She joined the Oregon State Police with a clear mission: to be the kind of officer she wished had been present in her neighborhood growing up, tough but fair, committed to justice rather than just enforcement. Unlike Michael, who had cultivated a warm, approachable demeanor, Allison was known for her intensity. She rarely smiled in official photos, her expression conveying the seriousness with which she approached her duties. Her performance reviews consistently noted her exceptional attention to detail, her physical fitness scores that surpassed many of her male colleagues, and her unwavering commitment to procedure. Officer Reed represents the future of law enforcement, her academy instructor had written. She brings a level of dedication and precision that is rare in rookies. However, she must learn to balance her intensity with the human element of policing. Allison lived alone in a modest apartment in southeast Portland, her walls decorated with her medals, certificates, and a single family photo, her mother beaming with pride at her police academy graduation. She had no time for relationships, no interest in the social aspects of police work that Michael navigated so effortlessly. For Allison, the badge was not just a job. It was her identity, her validation, her proof that she had transcended the limitations of her birth. The Oregon State Police, like many law enforcement agencies, struggled with diversity and representation. Despite Portland's significant African American population, Black officers made up less than 8% of the force. Michael and Allison, in their different ways, represented the department's efforts to change this dynamic. Michael was the face of successful integration, proof that a Black officer could rise to leadership while maintaining community connections. Allison embodied the new generation, technically proficient, highly educated, and unwilling to accept anything less than excellence. Their paths first crossed during a department diversity summit where Michael was the keynote speaker, and Allison was recognized as the top-performing rookie of her class. The contrast between them was immediately apparent. Michael, polished and charismatic in his dress uniform, speaking eloquently about building bridges between law enforcement and communities of color. Allison, rigid and formal, accepting her award with a brief nod before returning to her seat. "You remind me of myself at your age," Michael told her during the reception. "All business, no time for the politics." Allison's response was characteristically direct. "With respect, sir, I'm nothing like you. I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to do the job." Michael had laughed, charmed rather than offended by her bluntness. "Give it time, Officer Reed. You'll learn that being effective sometimes requires being likable." Neither could have predicted how this initial exchange would evolve into something that would destroy everything they had worked to achieve. The affair between Michael Harmon and Allison Reed began during a week-long advanced tactical training course in the autumn of 2023. As the senior instructor, Michael was tasked with preparing a select group of officers for specialized highway interdiction operations. Allison was the only woman and one of only 3 African-American officers in the class of 12. From the first day, the dynamic between them was electric. Michael, accustomed to deference from junior officers, found himself challenged by Allison's unwavering focus and occasional questioning of established protocols. During a classroom session on probable cause for vehicle searches, she had openly disagreed with his interpretation of a Supreme Court ruling. "With respect, Sergeant Harmon," she had said, her voice steady but firm, "the Reynolds decision specifically addresses the scope of searches incident to arrest. Your example actually violates the Fourth Amendment." The room had fallen silent. No one challenged Michael Harmon, especially not a junior officer with barely 2 years on the force. But instead of the reprimand everyone expected, Michael had smiled. "You're absolutely right, Officer Reed. I was testing to see who was paying attention to the details. Well done." After class, he had asked her to stay behind. "You've got a sharp legal mind," he said. "Have you considered applying for the department's legal liaison program?" "I'm more interested in field work, sir," Allison replied, gathering her materials. "Legal theory is important, but I joined to make a difference on the streets. Sometimes the biggest differences are made in courtrooms and policy meetings," Michael countered. "I could mentor you, help you navigate the political aspects of advancement." Allison had hesitated, her usual certainty wavering. Michael Harmon's mentorship could open doors that might otherwise remain closed to a black female officer. "I'll consider it, sir." Their first private meeting occurred the following week, ostensibly to discuss career development strategies. Michael suggested they meet at a coffee shop near the training facility rather than his office, explaining that informal settings often led to more productive conversations. Allison, still operating under the assumption that this was purely professional, agreed. Over Ethiopian coffee at a small cafe in Portland's Alberta Arts District, their conversation gradually shifted from professional to personal. Michael shared stories of his early struggles in the department, the subtle and not-so-subtle racism he had encountered, and how he had learned to navigate predominantly white institutions without losing his identity. "The key is to make them see your competence first," he explained. "Once they respect your abilities, they're more likely to hear your perspective on other issues." Allison found herself opening up in ways she never had before. She told him about growing up in Detroit, about watching her mother work herself to exhaustion, about joining the army to escape the cycle of poverty. She described the isolation of being one of the few black women in her unit in Afghanistan, the constant need to prove herself, the exhaustion of always being on. "I see so much of myself in you," Michael said, reaching across the table to briefly touch her hand. "That drive, that refusal to accept limitations, it's what makes you exceptional." The touch lasted only a moment, but it sparked something neither had anticipated. Allison, who had built walls around herself for years, felt them crack slightly. Michael, who had perfected the art of professional distance, found himself drawn to her intensity in a way that both thrilled and alarmed him. Their meetings became more frequent. What started as weekly mentoring sessions evolved into daily check-ins, then lunch meetings, then after-hours consultations that had little to do with police work. Michael began finding reasons to adjust Allison's schedule so their shifts overlapped. He assigned her to special projects that required them to work closely together. The physical relationship began 6 weeks after that first coffee meeting. They had been reviewing case files in a conference room after hours when Michael moved behind her to point out a detail in a report. The proximity, the late hour, the weeks of building tension, it all culminated in a kiss that neither could later say who initiated. "We can't do this," Allison whispered, even as she returned the kiss. "You're my superior. You're married." "I know," Michael replied, but he didn't stop. What followed was a passionate affair conducted with the same intensity Allison brought to everything in her life. They met at her apartment during lunch breaks, in empty parking garages during night shifts, in hotel rooms paid for with cash. Unlike many workplace affairs that relied on discretion, theirs was marked by a recklessness that seemed to dare discovery. Michael, accustomed to being above reproach, appeared to believe his reputation made him untouchable. He would call Allison from his office phone, send her messages through the department's communication system, even touch her arm or shoulder during roll calls in ways that made other officers uncomfortable but not suspicious enough to report. Allison, for her part, experienced a transformation. The rigid, isolated officer began to soften around the edges. Colleagues noticed her smiling more, engaging in casual conversation, even joining after-shift gatherings she had previously avoided. Only her partner, Officer Tommy Martinez, seemed to sense that something deeper was happening. "You're different lately," he commented during a patrol. "More human, I guess." "Maybe I'm just finally settling in," Allison replied, but her hand unconsciously went to her neck where Michael's lips had been hours earlier. The affair provided both participants with something they desperately needed. For Michael, Allison represented youth, passion, and an escape from the responsibilities that had defined his life for 2 decades. Her unwavering intensity made him feel powerful and desired in ways his stable marriage no longer did. With Allison, he wasn't a community leader or a role model. He was just a man experiencing raw attraction. For Allison, Michael offered the first real connection she had allowed herself since childhood. His attention validated her in ways that professional achievements never could. When he looked at her, she wasn't just Officer Reed, the tough female cop who had to prove herself daily. She was a woman worthy of desire, affection, and risk. The relationship might have continued indefinitely as a mutually beneficial escape from their respective pressures, if not for the pregnancy. When Allison missed her period in March 2024, she initially attributed it to stress. By April, when a home test confirmed her suspicions, the affair transformed from a thrilling secret to a ticking time bomb. She told Michael during one of their lunch meetings at her apartment. He had just finished describing a community policing initiative he was developing when she placed the positive test on the table between them. "I'm pregnant," she said simply. 8 weeks. Michael's reaction revealed the true nature of his character. The warmth drained from his face, replaced by a calculating coldness Allison had never seen before. "Have you considered all your options?" he asked carefully. "If you're asking if I've thought about abortion, yes. But I'm not doing it." "Allison, be reasonable. Think about what this means for both our careers." "I am thinking about it. I'm also thinking about the fact that I'm 31 years old, and this might be my only chance at motherhood." The argument that followed was their first and most bitter. Michael presented every logical reason for termination. Their careers, his family, the scandal it would cause, the impact on the department's reputation, especially given their status as prominent black officers. Allison countered with her own truth. She was tired of living in secret, tired of being the other woman, tired of sacrificing her own desires for others' comfort. "I'm not asking you to leave, Rebecca," she finally said. "But I won't hide this child or lie about who the father is. After the fundraiser next month, I'm requesting a meeting with Internal Affairs. I'll take whatever consequences come, but I'm done living this lie." Michael left her apartment that day with his mind racing. Everything he had built, his reputation, his family, his future ambitions of becoming the first black police commissioner in Oregon, was about to crumble. Over the next weeks, he attempted various strategies to change Allison's mind. He tried tenderness. "I love you. We can figure this out together, but we need time." He tried threats. "You'll be destroying both our careers. No department will hire you after this." He tried bargaining. "Give me 6 months. I'll set up a trust fund for the child, ensure they're taken care of financially." Nothing worked. Allison had made her decision with the same unwavering determination that had carried her from Detroit's poorest neighborhoods to Afghanistan's battlefields to the Oregon State Police. She would have this child, and she would not lie about its paternity. As the date of the fundraiser approached, Michael's desperation grew. He began researching jurisdictions with mandatory reporting laws for affairs between supervisors and subordinates. He consulted with a lawyer friend about potential civil liabilities. He even considered confessing to Rebecca preemptively, but the thought of her disappointment, of his son's disillusionment, paralyzed him. The perfect image he had cultivated for decades was about to shatter, and Michael Harmon, the man who had built his career on finding solutions to impossible problems, saw only one way out. The 3 weeks leading up to the fundraiser transformed Michael Harmon from a respected leader into a man consumed by desperation. His colleagues noticed the change. The normally composed sergeant became irritable, distracted, prone to uncharacteristic mistakes. During roll calls, he would lose his train of thought mid-sentence. Reports that once received his meticulous attention were returned with cursory signatures. "You feeling all right, Sarge?" Officer Danny Washington asked after Michael snapped at a rookie for a minor uniform infraction. "You seem off lately." "Just tired," Michael replied, forcing his practiced smile. "Budget meetings and bureaucracy. You know how it is." But those closest to him knew it was more than administrative stress. Rebecca noticed her husband's sleeplessness, his lack of appetite, the way he would stare at his phone for long periods, before suddenly putting it away when she entered the room. "Michael, what's going on?" she asked one night as he paced their bedroom at 3 a.m. "And don't tell me it's work. I've been married to you for 20 years. I know when something's really wrong." "There's a situation at the department," he said, choosing his words carefully. "An investigation that could affect a lot of people's careers." It wasn't entirely a lie. There would indeed be an investigation, just not the kind Rebecca imagined. Allison, meanwhile, was experiencing her own transformation. The pregnancy, though still not visible, had shifted something fundamental in her perspective. The rigid discipline that had defined her life began to soften as she contemplated motherhood. She started researching pediatricians, looking at apartments in better school districts, even considering a transfer to a desk position that would be safer for her child. "You're different," her partner Tommy Martinez observed during a traffic stop. "Calmer, maybe, less intense." "People change," Allison replied, unconsciously touching her still flat stomach. She had also begun documenting everything. In a leather-bound journal, she recorded dates, times, and details of her relationship with Michael. She saved text messages, emails, and voicemails. It wasn't just about protecting herself legally. It was about ensuring her child would someday understand the truth about their origins. Michael's plan began to take shape during a routine briefing on officer safety protocols. As the presenter discussed scenarios where officers had been ambushed during traffic stops, a deadly idea formed in his mind. What if Allison were to die in the line of duty? Not just any death, but one that would be seen as heroic, eliminating any reason to dig into her personal life. He spent hours studying incident reports of officers killed during drug interdiction operations. He researched areas known for drug trafficking, mapped response times for backup units, and even practiced staging crime scenes during off hours at the department's training facility. The location he chose was perfect: Old Loggers Road, a winding stretch of abandoned timber routes that had become a known corridor for drug runners moving product between Portland and the coast. The area was remote enough that gunshots might go unnoticed, but close enough to major highways that Allison's presence there wouldn't seem unusual. The opportunity presented itself when Michael learned that Allison had signed up for overtime on the night of the fundraiser. It was typical of her, always willing to work when others wanted time off for social events. He manipulated the scheduling system to ensure she would be patrolling alone in the sector that included Old Loggers Road. On the morning of the fundraiser, Michael made his final preparations. He retrieved an unregistered handgun from evidence lockup, a weapon seized during a drug raid months earlier that had been slated for destruction. He created false entries in the dispatch system that would later show Allison responding to reports of suspicious activity in the area. Throughout the day, he maintained his normal routine with chilling precision. He attended a community meeting about youth outreach programs, had lunch with Rebecca at her hospital, even stopped by the barbershop for his regular trim. To anyone watching, Sergeant Michael Harmon was simply preparing for another department function. But beneath this facade, he was orchestrating murder. At the fundraiser, Michael played his role perfectly. He shook hands with city councilors, discussed crime statistics with business leaders, and posed for photos with Rebecca, all while knowing that across town, Allison was beginning her patrol shift. When Allison arrived at the event during her dinner break, as Michael knew she would, he felt his heart rate spike. She was wearing her dress uniform, her braids pulled back in a tight bun, her posture military straight. In her hand was a manila envelope that he knew contained ultrasound images and documentation of their relationship. Their eyes met across the room. In that moment, Michael saw not the woman he had claimed to love, but a threat to everything he valued. And in Allison's eyes, he saw determination that told him she would not be dissuaded. "We need to talk," he said, intercepting her near the service entrance. "Not here. Meet me at mile marker 15 on Old Loggers Road. I'll tell Rebecca everything myself tonight. But let me do it my way, please." Allison studied his face, searching for deception. "You have 1 hour, Michael. After that, I'm coming back here and telling her myself. No more delays." 1 hour, he agreed. "That's all I need." As Allison left the fundraiser and headed toward her patrol car, Michael excused himself from the event, claiming he needed to handle an urgent personnel matter. Rebecca, accustomed to such interruptions, barely noticed his departure. Michael drove to Old Loggers Road with methodical calm. He arrived 20 minutes before Allison, giving him time to prepare the scene. He scattered drug paraphernalia, items also borrowed from the evidence room, around the designated meeting spot. He positioned his vehicle to block any potential escape route. When Allison's patrol car appeared in his rearview mirror, Michael felt a strange sense of detachment, as if he were watching himself from outside his body. This wasn't Michael Harmon, devoted husband and father, respected police sergeant, community leader. This was someone else entirely, someone capable of anything to protect what was his. Allison parked her cruiser and stepped out, the envelope still in her hand. The headlights from both vehicles created harsh shadows in the darkness. "I'm glad you came," Michael said, approaching her. "I've been thinking about what you said, and you're right. We need to stop hiding." Relief flickered across Allison's face. "You mean it?" "I do. But first, I need those documents. For when I talk to Rebecca tonight." As Allison turned to place the envelope on her car's hood, Michael drew the unregistered weapon from his jacket. His hand was steady, all those years of firearms training taking over. "Michael?" Allison's voice held confusion, then fear as she saw the gun. "What are you doing?" "I'm sorry," he said, and he almost meant it. "But you left me no choice." The first shot struck her in the chest, spinning her around. The second hit her in the head as she fell, ensuring there would be no survival, no testimony, no scandal. The sound echoed briefly through the trees before being swallowed by the night. For a moment, Michael stood frozen, the reality of what he'd done threatening to overwhelm him. Then his training kicked in. He had a scene to stage, a narrative to create, a lie to perfect. Working quickly but methodically, he placed the throwaway gun near Allison's right hand. He scattered more drug paraphernalia around her body and planted a significant amount of cash in her patrol car's glove compartment. Using her patrol car's computer, he typed a message. "Investigating suspicious vehicle, appears to be drug-related activity." He was careful about forensic evidence. He wore gloves, avoided stepping in blood, and used a small brush to remove any fibers that might have transferred from his clothing to hers. Years of crime scene investigation had taught him what to avoid. After 30 minutes of careful staging, Michael drove to a gas station 5 miles away. He made sure to be captured on security cameras purchasing coffee and chatting casually with the clerk. Then he waited another 20 minutes before calling dispatch. "This is Sergeant Harmon," he reported, injecting the right amount of shock and grief into his voice. "I've found Officer Reed's vehicle on Old Loggers Road. She's been shot. Multiple wounds. Send backup and EMS immediately." As he waited for the sirens that would signal the beginning of the investigation, Michael Harmon looked at his reflection in his car's window. The man staring back at him was a stranger, someone who had crossed a line from which there was no return. The perfect image he had spent a lifetime creating was preserved, but at a cost that would haunt him forever. In protecting his reputation, he had destroyed his soul. Detective Sarah Collins had investigated 97 homicides during her 15 years with the Major Crimes Unit, but the murder of a fellow officer always hit differently. As she drove to Old Loggers Road in the pre-dawn hours, she mentally prepared herself for what she would find, not just a crime scene, but the death of one of their own. Collins, a 20-year veteran of the Portland Police Bureau before transferring to the state police, had earned a reputation for her methodical approach and uncanny ability to spot inconsistencies. At 45, she was one of the few African-American women to reach detective rank in Oregon law enforcement, achievement that had required her to be twice as good as her peers just to be considered equal. The scene that greeted her was immediately troubling. Officer Allison Reed lay sprawled beside her patrol car, 2 gunshot wounds visible even from a distance. Sergeant Michael Harmon sat in his vehicle nearby, his head in his hands, the picture of a colleague devastated by tragedy. "Detective Collins," Harmon acknowledged as she approached. His voice was hoarse, his eyes red-rimmed. "I can't believe this happened. She was one of our best." "Walk me through how you found her," Collins said, her tone professional but gentle. Harmon's account was detailed and seemingly straightforward. Concerned about Reed's failure to check in during her shift, he had decided to patrol her sector. Knowing her tendency to investigate remote areas thoroughly, he had checked Old Loggers Road and discovered her vehicle. "I saw her car and knew something was wrong," he explained. "When I found her, God, there was nothing I could do." As Harmon spoke, Collins observed him carefully. She had known him for years, had even attended department functions at his home. The grief seemed genuine, but something in his demeanor felt rehearsed, as if he were reciting lines rather than recounting a traumatic discovery. The crime scene itself raised immediate red flags. The positioning of the throwaway gun near Reed's hand, seemed too convenient. The scattered drug paraphernalia appeared staged rather than naturally distributed. Most tellingly, the bullet wounds suggested execution-style shooting rather than the chaotic exchange typical of surprised encounters with drug dealers. "The pattern doesn't fit," Collins murmured to her partner, Detective James Wong, as they examined the blood spatter. "Look at the angle of entry. She was shot from above, likely while already on the ground." The forensics team arrived as dawn broke, bringing with them the tools that would ultimately unravel Michael's carefully constructed narrative. Led by Dr. Elena Ramirez, the team began the meticulous process of documenting every detail of the scene. "Something's off about the timeline, Doctor," Ramirez noted after initial examination. "Based on body temperature and lividity, she's been dead at least an hour longer than the sergeant's account suggests." Collins nodded, her suspicions growing. She ordered a comprehensive forensic analysis, including ballistics testing on both the service weapon and the throwaway gun, analysis of the drug evidence for fingerprints and DNA, complete download of Reed's patrol car computer and phone, gunshot residue testing on both Reed and Harmon, review of all surveillance cameras in a 10-mile radius. As the investigation expanded, Collins began quietly gathering information about Reed's recent activities. She interviewed patrol partners, supervisors, and administrative staff, careful not to reveal her growing suspicions about the crime scene. Officer Tommy Martinez provided the first significant lead. "Allison had been different lately," he told Collins during his interview. "Happier but also secretive. She was taking personal calls during shifts, leaving early for appointments. I figured she was seeing someone, but she never said who." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While reviewing routine administrative records, Collins discovered that Reed had scheduled a meeting with Internal Affairs for the Monday following her death. The subject line read, "Personal matter requiring formal disclosure." "What were you planning to disclose, Officer Reed?" Collins wondered aloud. The technology that Michael had failed to fully account for began to reveal the truth. Reed's patrol car computer showed that the message about investigating suspicious activity had been typed after the estimated time of death. More damning, cell phone tower data placed Michael at the crime scene 30 minutes before he claimed to have discovered the body. As Collins delved deeper into phone records, the affair came to light. Text messages recovered from cloud backups painted a clear picture of an inappropriate relationship between superior and subordinate. The final exchanges were particularly revealing. "Reed, I'm done waiting. After the fundraiser, I'm telling everyone. Harmon, please don't do this. Think about what you're destroying. Reed, I'm thinking about our child. They deserve better than lies." "Dear God," Collins whispered as she read. She was pregnant. The autopsy confirmed it. Allison Reed had been 8 weeks pregnant at the time of her death. This revelation transformed the investigation from a line-of-duty death to something far more sinister. Collins ordered surveillance footage from the fundraiser, which showed Michael and Allison's tense conversation near the service entrance. She pulled GPS data from both their vehicles, confirming they had traveled to Old Loggers Road around the same time. The final piece of evidence came from the ballistics report. The bullets that killed Reed didn't match the throwaway gun found at the scene. Instead, they matched ammunition typically used in older police-issue weapons, the kind that might be found in an evidence locker. Armed with this mounting evidence, Collins prepared to confront Michael Harmon. She knew she was about to arrest one of the department's most respected officers, a man who had been a mentor to many, including herself, early in her career. "Sometimes the badge doesn't just give us authority," she told her team as they prepared for the arrest. "Sometimes it gives us the arrogance to believe we're above the very laws we're sworn to uphold." 5 days after Allison Reed's murder, Detective Collins sat across from Michael Harmon in interview room 3 of the state police headquarters. The room, with its bare walls and single table, had hosted countless confessions over the years, but none quite like this. Michael sat rigidly in his chair, still wearing the same suit he'd worn to Reed's memorial service earlier that day. His facade of grief had begun to crack as Collins methodically presented the evidence against him. "We know about the affair, Michael," Collins said, sliding photos of text message transcripts across the table. "We know about the pregnancy. We know you were at the scene before you called it in." For nearly an hour, Michael maintained his innocence, offering increasingly implausible explanations for each piece of evidence. But as Collins continued her relentless presentation, the ballistics report, the GPS data, the staged crime scene, his resistance crumbled. "You want to know the truth?" he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The truth is, I created a life that demanded perfection. The perfect officer, the perfect husband, the perfect leader for our community. And when Allison threatened to expose the imperfection," he paused, seeming to search for words that could explain the inexplicable. "I didn't go there planning to kill her," he continued. "I thought I could convince her to wait, to be reasonable, but she was done negotiating. She stood there with those ultrasound pictures, talking about our child, about honesty, about doing the right thing, and all I could see was everything I'd built crashing down." Collins remained silent, letting him fill the void with his confession. When she turned to leave, saying she was going back to tell Rebecca, something snapped. "I drew my weapon, not the throwaway, my backup piece from home. The first shot was almost automatic, like my body acted before my brain could stop it." "And the second shot?" Collins prompted. Michael's face contorted with something between grief and self-loathing. "To make sure she couldn't tell anyone what I'd done, to preserve the lie at any cost." The confession continued for another hour, Michael detailing how he had planned the cover-up, how he had manipulated evidence, how he had performed grief at the crime scene. Throughout it all, Collins noted the absence of genuine remorse for Allison's death, only regret for the failure of his plan. "What about the child?" Collins asked. "Did you think about the life you were ending?" For the first time, Michael's composure completely shattered. "I couldn't let there be a child," he said, tears finally flowing. "A child would have been proof. Living, breathing proof of my failure." The arrest of Sergeant Michael Harmon sent shockwaves through the law enforcement community. The next morning's headlines screamed the sordid details. "Decorated officer charged in murder of pregnant subordinate." The trial of State v. Michael Harmon began 6 months later in a packed Multnomah County courthouse. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Janet Morrison, herself a trailblazer as the first African-American woman to hold the position, presented a devastating case built on forensic evidence, digital trails, and Michael's own recorded confession. The defense, led by renowned attorney Marcus Thompson, attempted to argue that the shooting was a crime of passion rather than premeditated murder. They painted Michael as a man pushed to the breaking point by circumstances beyond his control. "This was not the calculated act of a cold-blooded killer," Thompson argued in his opening statement. "This was a moment of tragic madness by a man who had dedicated his life to serving others, only to find himself trapped in an impossible situation." But the prosecution systematically dismantled this narrative. D.A. Morrison presented evidence of Michael's meticulous planning: the theft of the weapon from evidence lockup, the falsified dispatch records, the careful staging of the crime scene. Each detail painted a picture of premeditation rather than spontaneity. Rebecca Harmon's testimony proved particularly devastating. Having discovered the full extent of her husband's betrayal through the investigation, she took the stand as a prosecution witness. Dressed in black, her wedding ring conspicuously absent, she spoke with quiet dignity about the man she thought she knew. Michael was always two people, she testified. Her voice steady despite visible emotion. There was the public Michael, the hero, the leader, the role model. And there was the private Michael, controlling, image-obsessed, willing to do anything to maintain his reputation. I see now that the public Michael was the performance. The private Michael was the reality. She revealed how Michael had become increasingly paranoid in the weeks before the murder, installing tracking apps on her phone, questioning her about conversations with other officers' wives, and becoming furious when she suggested they seek marriage counseling. He said counseling would make us look weak, Rebecca explained. That people in our position couldn't afford to show vulnerability. Image was everything to him. The most dramatic moment came when Allison Reed's mother, Denise Reed, took the stand. The 60-year-old retired teacher had traveled from Detroit to attend every day of the trial. Her testimony about her daughter's life and dreams moved many in the courtroom to tears. Allison called me the week before she died, Denise testified. She told me she was pregnant and planning to raise the baby alone if necessary. She said, "Mama, I'm going to break the cycle. My child will have the opportunities I didn't." She was so happy, so full of hope. When asked about her feelings toward Michael, Denise's composure cracked. "He didn't just kill my daughter, he killed my grandchild. He killed our future. And for what? To protect his image? What kind of man values reputation over life?" The forensic evidence presented by Detective Collins created an unshakable foundation for the prosecution's case. Shell casings from Michael's personal weapon, GPS data showing his movements, and the staged crime scene all pointed to premeditated murder. The defense's attempts to question the evidence fell flat against Collins' methodical presentation. Dr. Elena Ramirez's testimony about the autopsy findings was clinical but powerful. "The first shot would have incapacitated Officer Reed," she explained. "The second shot, delivered at close range while she was already on the ground, was unnecessary for anything except ensuring death. This was an execution, not self-defense or a crime of passion." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning with a verdict: guilty of first-degree murder, guilty of tampering with evidence, guilty of official misconduct, and guilty of theft of police property. At sentencing, Judge Patricia Williams delivered a scathing condemnation of Michael's actions. "You held a position of extraordinary trust," she said, looking directly at him. "You were meant to protect and serve, to be a leader in your community, to set an example for other officers. Instead, you abused your power, betrayed your oath, and committed the ultimate act of violence against someone who trusted you. Your actions have damaged not only your victims and their families, but the entire law enforcement community and the public's trust in it." She sentenced Michael to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus additional consecutive sentences for the other charges. As Michael was led away in handcuffs, he passed Rebecca in the gallery. For a moment, their eyes met. She looked at him not with hatred or anger, but with profound sadness for the man she had once loved and the life they had built together, now irrevocably destroyed. The case of Michael Harmon and Allison Reed stands as a chilling testament to how power corrupts and secrets destroy. What began as forbidden passion ended in cold-blooded murder, revealing that behind the badge and uniform, human weakness can fester into something monstrous. Today, Allison Reed's name is whispered in police academies across the country, not as a victim, but as a warning. Her death reminds us that integrity cannot be worn like a uniform. It must be lived, especially by those entrusted with enforcing our laws. If this investigation has moved you, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. How do we reconcile the image of protector with the reality of predator? What signs might we have missed? Thank you for joining us at True Crime Atlas, where we believe that understanding these cases helps us see the darkness that can hide in plain sight. Subscribe to our channel for more in-depth investigations that go beyond the headlines to explore the human cost of crime. Hit the notification bell to stay updated on our upcoming series, examining betrayal within law enforcement and the thin line between authority and abuse. Remember, the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and never stop questioning.